because they know that the future travel customers have got high expectations. They've got personal needs and they're looking for a provider who can meet those needs. If travel businesses are not looking at being inclusive, having a wider customer base, they really are shooting themselves in the foot and they're going to miss out essentially. So inclusion isn't just about doing the right thing, it's about profitability, it's about performance, and it's about new target markets. I think in terms of the business case, businesses are starting to really understand that, why this is so important. And from a reputational perspective, obviously if people have a bad experience, they're going straight online to share it. You need to get in front of that, right? And to be thinking about the likely pitfalls that we could face if we don't do the work and really take this seriously.
Hello, thank you so much, Atlyn, for your time and for being able to be here to share more about yourself and your journey. I'm really excited. I think
Thanks for the
no
interview, I
worries.
guess. Yeah, I
I
was just
think
going to
it's
say
only
thanks so much.
I think it's only fair to start with an introduction. If you can tell us a little bit more about yourself, how you got into the industry, what were you doing? Tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nelma, for doing this interview. It's nice to think that people will be interested in my story. And so I really appreciate the offer of you inviting me to share a bit more about my career in travel and beyond. And so my name's Atlyn Forde, and I guess my career in the travel industry started over 20 years ago. I initially started working in the travel industry for BALPA, which is the British Airline Pilots Association. And so I was the head of communications. It was really, a great role, had a lot of autonomy, and it was a great team, and it was really good to understand the way the pilots work. I'd always wanted to be a pilot when I was younger, but I never pursued that. I went into marketing and did a degree in that, but really enjoyed, running the magazine. I kind of wrote and designed the magazine alongside an advisory board of pilots who would support with the content development. But I was able to learn so much about the travel industry at that time. So it was a great way to enter and have my first role, area that I love, which is marketing and communications. I'd spent quite a lot of time working in magazines in other parts, other industries. And so it was great to, I guess, come into the travel industry that way. And then from there, I moved to a marketing role for the Saint Lucia Tourism Board, as it was called then. Now it's the Saint Lucia Tourism Authority. And I started in a marketing executive position there. And so it was such an interesting story. My heritage is Saint Lucia. My mother is from Saint Lucia. And I've been going there since I was a small child. I think my first trip was with my grandmother when I was about 7 or 8, and I spent the whole of the 6-week holiday there. And I look back on that trip with such fondness. I've been going back ever since. And so when I saw this job advertised in the paper, this is how long ago it was. It was in a newspaper that I saw this ad. I think it was in The Guardian. Applied for it because obviously I had been working in marketing, and it was marketing a product, a destination that I already had a connection with and that I was familiar with. And so I was really pleased when I'd been invited by Patricia, who's now my good friend, come to the interview. I already had my eldest daughter then, so she was quite young. She might have been about, I don't know, 2 or 3, something like that. She was quite small. So I went for the interview, and it was amazing with a Saint Lucia High Commission. And I met Patricia and another lady called Debbie Melchior, and did the interview. It was great, lots of rapport, and I shared all the things I knew about the destination. I was very passionate about it, and I was really, really keen to do marketing. Anyway, so that was fine. I thought it went well. But then I went away, and I was just thinking about all the things they told me about this role, and that you'd have to travel to St. Lucia on fam trips and press trips, and you'd have to travel around the UK to go to do training with travel agents, and you have to go to exhibitions. And although I just was so excited about it, I was thinking, hold on a minute, how's this going to manage to work with me and my daughter? How's going to do this? So I spoke to my family about it. They were trying to give me advice, and I decided that I'm not going to go for a second interview, which I've been invited for. And so away we went on a staycation. I think we went to Lyme Regis, me and my aunt and my daughter, in a beautiful cottage. I think I had a call from Patricia, and she was like, I just saw that you said you're not coming for the second interview, like you have to come. And I was like, I've spoken to my family, I just don't think being able to travel around the world is going to work for me. And she's like, oh, but you must, you're our top candidate. So I was like, okay, but I'm in Lyme Regis, I'm like 3 hours drive away. She said, no, you must come. So I was like, okay. So I went back and I said, guess what, I'm going back. I'm going to go for this interview. So I drove from Lyme Regis all the way back to London for this interview, and obviously got the job. I think it was just destined to be there. And it was one of my best jobs still to this day. I just love my time there. Many years working as a marketing executive, alongside Patricia and others in the team, and then other directors as well. I left and did some other bits and pieces, and then the director position came up again, and so I applied for that, and so I then went back and became the director. So yeah, I think some of my best years in my career I did travel the world extensively, back and forth to St. Lucia, been to St. Lucia for a day. It made a significant impact in terms of tourism,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
driving,
Yeah.
travel to St. Lucia from, the
Yeah.
UK and
Yeah.
Europe. It's an exciting job. Again, lots of autonomy in terms of thinking creatively, partnerships, etc., joint
Yeah.
marketing, and really showcasing all the wonderful aspects of St. Lucia. One of the highlights actually was I at the time we were hosting the Cricket World Cup, and I
Mm.
had to deliver a campaign to try to get the Barmy Army, I think they're called, all the crazy UK cricket fans to come to St. Lucia for it. Travelled again around the UK, going to cricket matches and doing lots of marketing. But that was a great thing to think that we were hosting the England team, because obviously we know they're keen travellers, and that was my source market. So that was one of the real highlights. But there were many highlights during that time. So yeah, definitely think of it
Wow.
fondly. But in the end, it's funny how life works out, because ultimately the
Yeah.
reason why I decided to leave was because I was traveling a lot, and I had another daughter during my time. In between,
Yeah.
I had my second daughter. I mean, I just thought, my eldest will tell you even to today that, you weren't there very much, Mum, for my
Mm.
plays and for my school things. So she felt it, and the school would tell me things that her behaviour would change when I was
Yeah.
away while I was traveling. So I was very conscious that when I had my second daughter, and she was obviously growing up, I didn't necessarily want to have that negative impact on her. And so yeah, I took the decision that I thought I better leave travel. But
Yeah.
I didn't leave straight away. I kind of did a few other jobs, and so I've worked
Yeah.
for luxury tour operators. I've worked for GDS. I worked for Travelport, and so I've kind of moved around and done a few other different things in the travel industry again, which is great to have that breadth of knowledge. But in the end, yeah, I decided there was an opportunity, the change of government in St. Lucia. I decided that was my time to try to do something different, and so I
Yeah.
decided, if I'm going to do this, I want to be very intentional about what sector
Wow.
I want to move into. I also was prioritizing being close to home, and so I
Yeah.
had earmarked the financial services industry as a great place to want to work. And so I was looking for roles in FS, and I was lucky enough to get one that was
Wow.
very close to home, to the point that I could drive to work in, I think, maybe 15-20 minutes.
Oh,
And I used
wow.
to come home at lunchtime. We got a dog at that time, so we had the puppy. So I'd come home, feed the puppy, and spend time with her. She's a big dog now, but well, she's still a little
Yeah.
dog, but she's older. Yeah, so I moved to financial services, but still had
Yeah.
so many connections and contacts in the travel industry. To this day, it's a sort of sector that I love, and we all know that relationships are so important in that
Yeah. Yeah.
industry. And so, even though I had moved, I was still had my eye on the travel industry, and was thinking about all the wonderful things I was learning in a different sector that could be beneficial to the travel industry.
Yeah.
And so that sparked another idea, which I'm sure you're going to ask me about shortly as well.
That was a huge introduction. It just seems like everything worked out well for you. It was all aligned for you, isn't it? I'm sure that you had a very good time working at St. Lucia's tourism boards, helping with the tourism strategy, attracting more tourists. So that's an amazing job to do. And obviously, because you had your daughter, then you had your second one, you had to then move away from the travel industry. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? How was your experience moving away from the travel industry and transitioning into the financial services industry?
Yeah.
Was it like a big change for you? How did you
Yeah,
feel?
it's a really good question, Nelma, that a lot of people would ask me about, because, it's not always easy to transition between different sectors. And although I had a lot of transferable skills, I had run an office, I had people working across Europe, in France and Germany. I was doing big campaigns, £500,000 campaigns, stakeholder management and engagement, talking about, customer insights and ensuring that, understanding the metrics around your campaigns to ensure that
Mhm.
they deliver. And so all of these were really important transferable skills that I brought with me to financial services, but it was definitely very different also. I feel like within FS, there were larger companies that I work for, and they had better systems in place, better
Okay.
infrastructure. So that was a keen difference. I think the data and metrics that they had was also significantly more, and the tools they would use, like Power BI and other tools,
Yeah.
to really understand the metrics around customers and their financial needs. There was also much more
Okay.
governance. It's a regulated
Okay.
environment, and so that was a
Mhm.
whole new area that I learned around compliance, regulatory training, all the things that you have to consider with regards to, advertising in financial services. I got, a
Yeah.
lot more regulation around it. But again,
Yeah.
I just love learning new things. And so for
Yeah.
me, I was
Yeah.
really excited about that. But it's really interesting what you said about that transition, because I'm just trying to think about the journey and how I was able to do that. Obviously, I was applying for
Yeah.
many different jobs, but
Mhm.
I think what I also remember about the interview process, which are several different interviews that I had, was that the rapport and the relationship that I had with the person interviewing me. And it was a few
Mhm.
people that I met during that time, but I do always remember that it felt good. And this is sometimes how I know that I'm going to be successful in certain things, because the energy is right, and I'm connecting with someone on a human level,
Mhm.
as well as
True.
trying to obviously highlight and sell my services. And I also did it through a recruitment agency, and she was also very supportive, the lady that was trying to place me in that role. So I guess those would be two things that I would say if people are looking to transition, to really identify your transferable skills and be very clear on how they align with where you're taking it from, or what you're going to bring. Because people quite often are looking for a new way of looking at things, fresh eyes. Although it's a similar
Yeah.
area, it's still marketing,
Mhm.
it's still insights. They want
Mhm.
fresh eyes. And obviously,
Yeah.
having had, I guess, marketing a destination, that's amazing, right? A lot of people like
Yeah.
in awe of you were not marketing like a product, an
Yeah. Yeah.
individual product, you were marketing a whole destination. And so I think don't discount the experience that you have when you're transferring to different sectors. Really
Yeah.
talk up what you have and be proud of what you've done. And because,
Yeah.
if you feel like, oh, I'm not sure if they're going to take me or they're going to value
Mhm.
what I bring, they feel that energy. So you need to come with the confidence, right? And I think all of these things that I'm sharing are important, because
Mhm.
ultimately I wrote a book about this experience. Is one of the things that I used to get
Wow.
asked about a lot, well,
Okay.
how I transitioned from travel and tourism to financial services, because it's a sector that I would highly recommend for people, because there are lots of opportunities
Mhm.
in different areas of financial services, but
Mhm.
also the pay is good and you get bonuses. And so I'm not
Mhm.
saying every single organization has the same reward structure, but for me, it was definitely worked out financially
Yeah.
for me. I was able to thrive and move into different positions and get to a senior position within financial services as well, and to build again relationships with the CEO
Mhm.
and others in the exco, which helped me to thrive as well. But I say that I wrote this book called Navigating Crossroads, because ultimately that's what it was. I navigated the crossroad from one sector to the other. I'd also navigated a crossroad in terms of being an employee to being a senior leader within
Okay.
organizations. And then
Interesting.
later on, it's
Yeah.
interesting, but to me,
Yeah.
it seems
Yeah.
like just a natural evolution. Don't
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
like it was something that was, I'm not saying it was easy, but I feel like when the time is right, you feel like it's time to move. And then you're looking for opportunities and you're looking to kind
Mhm.
of strategize and understand, how am I going to make the move? In addition to that, transitioned from being a senior leader to being an entrepreneur and a business owner. And so these were the transitions or the crossroads that I'd navigated that people often
Mhm.
ask about. And this is what was in the book. Not just my own experiences navigating crossroads, but the experiences of other Black women, because I think there are other
Oh.
challenges that we face and
Yeah.
biases, etc. And so it wasn't just about that. It's really just a playbook.
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
navigate these crossroads whilst maintaining your well-being? So there's a little
So,
bit
and it
about the
is,
transition.
sorry, it is available anywhere still online for people to
Oh,
purchase
yeah.
and read?
It's on my website. So if you go to
Okay.
Communicate Inclusively, you'll see it there under Navigating Crossroads. But yeah,
I
if
have
you
to
reach
read
out to
that.
me, I'm happy to share.
Nice. So you've learned so much working in travel, and then obviously you gain a lot of transferable skills, which is amazing that you were able to take that into a different industry, and then you returned back to the travel industry. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, your move back into the industry again, and what are the things that you've learned from working in the financial industry you brought back with you into the travel industry?
Another fantastic question, and I guess it leads off from where I left. So, whilst working in financial services, I mentioned that I was given many opportunities, and one of the opportunities was to head up and chair the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee. So, although my core role was working in marketing and insights, I was
Mhm.
able to do additional work which involved looking at the culture within the business. It was a brand new area that the business hadn't focused on, but globally it was around the time of the George Floyd murder. We were part of a lot wider group, and so globally there was this expectation that the organisation would start to lean into looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion. But as I said, it was a blank sheet of paper, and so it was announced in a town hall. So we said monthly
Mhm.
town halls that the CEO would deliver, and after he mentioned that this is an area that they want to explore, I immediately emailed him and said, oh, I heard that you mentioned that the business wants to focus more on diversity, equity and inclusion. It sounds really interesting. How can I get involved? I'd never emailed him before, the CEO. I see him around and say hello or whatever, but I'd never had a reason to engage with him directly in that way. And that was just one of the best things I ever could have done, because, he was so receptive to that. It transpired over time. He gave me a lot of autonomy to launch the D&I committee and to become the chair. But not only that, as it grew and took off and other people joined, we were making a real impact in the organisation, and we really had an impact on the culture, and people were, feeling that sense of belonging and feeling able to have psychological safety and to talk about the issues that they were having. As I mentioned before, there was a global CEO who wanted other businesses in the group to be doing this too. And so I actually became the chair of the global D&I committee and was liaising with people globally about their inclusion strategies. And that was just so exciting to be able to talk to people in India, in Australia, all over the world about what they were doing. And although there were differences, there was a lot of alignment as well. And so that was something that I really relished. And I discovered a new passion, I guess, for inclusion. It was brilliant. A lot of it, I think, that was linked to my work in marketing and engaging with people and being able to use inclusive language and wanting to create these initiatives around inclusion that use the same principles as I would use for a marketing campaign. Like, who's the target audience? What are the key messages? How can we give it a creative execution rather than just sharing an article? We'd always try to create an activation, some kind of in-person activity, trying to bring lived experience and bring voices that could tell their story authentically, which people really engaged with. They never knew the person in the business had, this challenge and how they overcame it, and they learned from that. It was a really great time, and to have a CEO and a leadership team who were very supportive and encouraging, to the point that over the years I decided that I wanted this to be my core area of work, and they enabled me to, I guess, extend my role and become the head of engagement and inclusion. So I transitioned again from being in a marketing and insights role into being a head of engagement and inclusion within the same business. And so, this kind of unlocked a real passion for me. And I guess this is how I was able to come back into travel, because whilst also supporting the organisation and the global business, I was also working alongside other businesses in the sector. So there were associations, initiatives that would bring other financial services organisations together. And so I just kind of joined these committees and groups so that I'd share the experience that we were having in our business with others. I started to do training and speaking and sharing the practice, the strategies that I'd used and implemented in our business with others. And this is when I started to see that my expertise and knowledge that I'd gained was valuable to other organisations and other people. And this is when I started to think perhaps this could be an area that I could use for my own business, my own consultancy. Now, I didn't mention that I'd always wanted to be self-employed. I've had many micro businesses over the years doing many different things, but none of them had been sufficient enough really for me to ever think about it being my sole income and revenue. But when I started working on inclusion, I was like, this is an opportunity, because I had always thought that my consultancy, because I always knew I'd have one, would be focused on marketing, because that was my area of expertise. But as I started to work on inclusion and inclusive practice and being able to support others, I realised that this was an opportunity, something I was really passionate about. I had skills in this area, and I could launch my own consultancy within inclusion and inclusive communication. So combining my two passions, still to this day extremely supportive, was open to my proposal of working part-time. So I was promoted to this head of engagement and inclusion position, but I was also able to work part-time so I could grow my own consultancy.
Amazing.
And that's kind of where it happened. But I had to put together a proposal, and it didn't just happen. I had to kind of think about how am I going to present this to the business so that they can see the value that I would bring. And they were also very supportive. They could see it wasn't a conflict in terms of me having a consultancy with regards to the main area of business in terms of lending. And so, they were very supportive of me in doing that. But I did respect that honour that I'd been given, that privilege, because I didn't necessarily approach clients that were in the same sector or adjacent to what we were doing. I looked for clients elsewhere, and also in the travel industry. So I come on to that now, and that all the things that I'd learned around inclusion, different organisations coming together to create a more inclusive financial services and mortgage industry, was a model that I thought could work particularly well in the travel industry. So I still had my contacts, looking at the sector, talking to people around diversity, equity, inclusion within the travel sector and inclusive travel and what was happening. And there were things happening in the industry. TTG had their Fairer Travel event, and there were, content was, but there wasn't necessarily an opportunity for those who had maybe smaller organizations to get the support
Yeah.
that they needed. And I thought there was a bit of a gap, but I felt that the model that I was very familiar with, whereby different organizations come together to share best practice and to have a larger impact on an industry, could certainly work in the travel industry. And that's where I kind of leaned in and developed the Inclusive Travel Forum, which was designed to be and still is a membership organization. And so we work with a range of different travel organizations, no matter what their size, and support them. It's designed to be accessible. It's affordable for anyone, no matter how large or small your organization, we can support you. And so, yeah, that's how I was able then to, I guess, reignite my passion for travel and to continue, using my skills and expertise to help and support travel businesses, the Inclusive Travel Forum, but also being a speaker at like World Travel Market. And I mentioned the TTG Fair of Travel, being a speaker there and sharing, again, some of my experiences, some of the challenges that I could see that organizations and individuals have, that travelers have, that those working in the industry are experiencing bias as well. So that is really the story of how the Inclusive Travel Forum came about and how I was able to use everything that I'd learned to launch it.
That's an inspiring story, Atlyn. And you've left a big impact in the financial services industry. I'm glad that you came back to the industry, to the travel industry, because we do need it. I'm sitting here just hearing you speak. I'm really inspired with your story. It's nice to hear that you've accomplished so much, and I'm sure there's so much to accomplish.
Oh, there's so much more to do.
So can you tell us a little bit more about your vision now that you're back into the industry? Tell us a little bit more about your vision with Inclusive Travel Forum, and where do you see it going?
This is the really exciting piece, Nelma, because I feel like there is so much opportunity for the Inclusive Travel Forum to grow. So our mission, like I said, is to create a more inclusive travel industry. And we look at kind of three core areas in terms of the support that we provide. So we're helping travel businesses to create inclusion for the people that work in their business, their colleagues, so that they are treated fairly, so they've got opportunities to progress and to thrive. And so that every level, no matter what your background, you feel that you can, have a thriving career, because we can still see that within certain aspects of the industry, there isn't as much diversity as there could be. The travel industry is global. We celebrate difference and culture. That's what it's all about, exploring people and finding out more about them. But considering we represent so many different places around the world, and the expertise of those people can help us to enrich people who want to travel to those destinations, we still don't always see that diversity. Even if, say, for example, we're selling a product in Africa, whatever part of Africa that is, you may not find people that have originated from there or have lived there that, are there selling the product or designing the product. And so it's through a lens that maybe isn't as inclusive as it could be. But there are people, within the industry that are working really hard and feel like they're struggling, they're coming up against barriers and they're not able to get to those most senior positions. And so a lot of organizations are committed to finding ways in which they can recruit people and use succession planning and progression tools to create a fairer, more equitable culture within their businesses. So we help with that. Secondly, obviously a really important part of the travel industry is the consumers, right? And so again, we help our travel businesses to think about how they can provide a more inclusive service for their customers. And that could be how they engage with them, representation in terms of their marketing and their experience when they reach the destination and how they get there. All of the aspects and all of the areas of inclusion are covered. We don't just focus on one. Accessibility is a big thing, and we do, quite a lot there, but we'll also look at race, religion, LGBTQ+, neurodiversity, mental health, all the things that ensure that no matter who you are as a customer, you feel that you can travel and see the world like anybody else can, and that you can go and have the best experience, and that the money you spend has been worthwhile, and you're not going to feel that you're being discriminated against or experiencing bias or even violence whilst you're traveling because of who you are. And so it's a case of working with travel businesses to showcase how they can do that, to share best practice with other destinations, tour operators, etc., and how you can deliver an experience that is authentic but also inclusive, and that the way that you market your product is actually the true experience that your customers have when they reach their destination. And then the last area is with regards to the communities in which people are traveling to. So you will find that in some destinations that the equity in terms of the revenue that is generated through travel doesn't always reach those who need it most. Again, barriers, and there can be a certain group of people that will get the most benefit. The supply chains, the due diligence, intelligence around who you use when you're selecting partners and providers, your DMCs, etc., your tour providers, even the tours that you select. We want to encourage travel businesses to really have an inclusion lens or an inclusive lens when they're looking at their supply chains, the questions that they ask their providers before deciding who they want to work with, but also just thinking about the diversity of it all. There's no point in every single provider having the same experience because there are so many different travelers that are going to want a different experience. And so think about the product you're offering, the service, and is it truly inclusive? Or in fact, who may not feel comfortable with this product? Who are we missing? What are the blind spots? And so those are the three areas: colleagues, customers, the communities in which you're sending people to. We provide resources, templates, training. We're there as a critical friend, 24-hour email question if you have anything to ask. And people quite often don't have anyone to ask these questions, so we're available for that. And we'll also do an audit. If you're an executive member, we'll do audits and get a really good idea of the areas that you need to focus on. Sometimes it can be quite overwhelming for organisations to know where to start. But by doing an audit with us, we'll go through a 10-point checklist and really identify the core areas that you could be looking at. And so this can be really helpful. The other thing that we're starting to do more of now are partnerships with organisations. Not everyone wants or needs a straight membership. They're looking for something like a project or an initiative, whether that be an inclusive guide to their destination, whether that be training for their leadership teams. Maybe it's trained if it's a hotel chain for their front desk staff. So we're quite open to opportunities and partnerships and finding different ways to help organisations where they're at. And I think that's really important, that every organisation is different and has different needs and different areas to focus on. And we want to be quite agile to be able to support them in any which way we can. So the future's bright. There's much to do. And although there's been some pushback on DEI, I think in the travel industry, inclusive travel is just going from strength to strength because they know that the future travel customers have got high expectations. They've got personal needs and they're looking for a provider who can meet those needs. And travel businesses are not looking at being inclusive, having a wider customer base. They really are shooting themselves in the foot and they're going to miss out essentially. So inclusion isn't just about doing the right thing. It's about profitability. It's about performance. And it's about new target markets. I think in terms of the business case, I think businesses are starting to really understand that, why this is so important. And from a reputational perspective, obviously, if people have a bad experience, they're going straight online to share it. And so you need to get in front of that, right? And to be thinking about the likely pitfalls that we could face if we don't do the work and really take this seriously. So I'm excited about the future and just engaging with more and more travel providers and sharing what we do and offering support in all the ways in which we can.
Sounds good. Sounds very good. And I'm so excited to see you achieve so much more with Inclusive Forum Travel. And I know you have an event coming soon. Do you want to share a little bit more about that? The details, when is it happening, where?
For sure. So it's happening on Wednesday, the 24th of June, so just a couple of weeks away. And it's really focused on the customer experience. Like I said, how can we build truly inclusive travel and destinations? And we've got an amazing lineup of speakers. We're hosting it at the Saint Lucia High Commission. Obviously, I've got a strong connection with Saint Lucia. And I'm delighted to be doing a fireside chat with Patricia Charlery-Lyon, who is the marketing director for the Saint Lucia Tourism Authority and a good friend of mine. And they'll be talking about the culture and cultural tourism and authentic tourism. Saint Lucia's got a fantastic product whereby different providers across the country can benefit through tourism. I just spoke a bit about that. This is not something new for Saint Lucia. They've been doing this for a very long time. And so, I'm excited to have that conversation about why it's really important to ensure that everybody in the country can benefit and why all those culture tours are so important and the benefits that customers get from engaging with people around the country and not feeling like they have to stay in their all-inclusive hotel. So we're going to be talking about that, having really authentic travel experiences and how you can reach audiences and talk about all the things. So that should be exciting. And then we've got a panel discussion. And again, we've got a great panel. We've got Ross from Visit Britain. We've got Tracy from Gibraltar Tourism. And then we've got Kerry from Clear Marketing. And she represents luxury destinations and hotel product. And then we've got Ace from Black Diamond, and she's going to be talking about inclusive marketing. She's expert in paid media. How can you, use your travel marketing to tell an authentic story? And the storytelling is so important. People want to see themselves. They want to see what the product's offering. And so we've got a panel to cover lots of things there about the needs of the 2030 traveler, because I guess for travel, you need to be thinking always into the future and what products are you going to be creating. And so we're talking about that. We're talking about other aspects of inclusive travel. And so, yeah, I encourage anyone who really is interested in learning more and learning from others, because all of the people that I mentioned, the speakers, they've got,
Yeah,
great case studies to share
that's true.
around accessibility, inclusive travel, whether it comes to food and halal travel, or whether it comes to people being neurodivergent and having sensory
Yeah.
rooms, all the things. We want to really inspire people to think about their product, their offering, and this is the place to be if you're looking for ideas around best practice and how you can implement that in your destination or in your product, whether it be a hotel or a tour or an attraction, no matter where you are in the world. So yeah, hopefully
Yeah.
people will come along. We've got some great people that have already confirmed from a range of different destinations and organisations. And so we'd love for more people to register and come along and join
Yeah.
us on the 24th of June.
That sounds very exciting. I'm not gonna lie, and I can't wait to be there. It sounds very exciting. I just see a bright future for Inclusive Travel Forum, and I know it will grow even more. And I'm glad to see you doing this work, something that you're passionate about. I'm just sitting here, just listening to everything, taking it all in, and just being so inspired with your story and everything you've mentioned. I may have to go back to the recording and rewatch it all again. It is very inspiring, Atlyn. You should be very proud of yourself and your achievements and for being a great role model for your daughters as well.
Thank you so much, Nelma.
And I have one more question before we end this. Just one more question. If you could leave the travel industry with one message, what would it be?
Just start. I think some people, when they hear inclusion or DEI, their eyes glaze over or there's fear, especially with the pushback that's coming from certain parts of the world around inclusion. Push past that. I mentioned the business case, and there is a strong business case for ensuring that what you're offering is suitable for everybody and appeals to everyone. A bigger benefit to having a team that feel a sense of belonging and are able to perform at their best and are able to thrive and reach their full potential. Don't hesitate. Wherever you are at, there are things that you can do, because it's an ongoing journey. You'll never reach the ultimate. There's always something to do. And so for me, the message is, yeah, just get started and make contact, because if you're having any concerns or issues, unsure, uncertain about it, I'm definitely here to help. So yeah, just do it, as they say.
Thank you so much, Atlyn, for your time and
Thank you.
for all the advice and the messages that you've shared with us today.
Oh, thank you, Norma. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate everything you've shared today, and for being so supportive and encouraging. So yeah, looking forward to sharing this video with others, and hopefully they'll find it interesting as well.
I'm going to watch it back, I promise.
Brilliant. All right. Thanks
Yeah.
again for that. I appreciate it.